So that's not good. So again, welcome for everyone that doesn't know me. You might know me from Instagram, but we all know that's not real. So I'm pretty much what you see is what you get on Instagram. I try to be as honest with you guys as possible and just teach you the things that I have learned throughout my own personal experience and my own personal practice. And I really just want to try and help you guys as much as I possibly can. So, welcome to the class today. A couple questions, and I think it's probably why most of you are here. But how many of you feel tired? Feel free to, type some of your symptoms in the chat. How many of you, can get up and go throughout the day, but by mid-afternoon, you're like, I could take a nap if I had the time to, or you reach for that afternoon cup of coffee or something sweet, right, to pick you up. Maybe you don't sleep well. Maybe that's not just from small children, but you just don't sleep well. You wake up throughout the night, or you're just waking up and feeling very tired, still not rested. Some of you may be experiencing constipation. Some of you may be here because you just are doing all the right things and you're still struggling with weight gain, right? That's a real big one for people. And joint pain, all of those things that you guys are putting. How many of you have suspected that maybe you had a thyroid issue and you went to your doctor and they're like, everything's normal, you're fine? Right? That was my story. I before I knew better, when we learn about the thyroid in conventional medicine, we're told that having a TSH of 5, 6, 7, upwards of 10 is okay. And I'm here to tell you that does not make you feel good at all, and it's not okay. And the problem is, sorry, I'm going to let someone in. The problem is that many conventional panels that test the thyroid are not looking at the whole picture. And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about here. And I'm here to tell you that you're probably correct. There probably is an issue. And one of the things in my course that I'm releasing is that I want to help you try to identify that and be an advocate for your own health and bring those issues to your doctors. So, who am I? I wanted to just share a little bit of my background. I'm a family nurse practitioner. Again, my name is Erin Gagney. I'm the owner of Revive Wellness, my own functional medicine clinic that I opened in Bluffton, South Carolina. Actually, a year tomorrow, we will be open. So, really, just the craziest year of my life, to be honest. But I opened that because I fell in love with functional medicine back in 2017. So, I went through traditional nurse practitioner school, board certified as a family nurse practitioner. And it really took a little bit for me to kind of find my way. I did a little bit in chronic pain management with stem cell, PRP. I did a lot in aesthetics and skincare, which I still do some of that. And then I also did internal medicine in long-term care facilities. So a lot of end of life care. But it wasn't until 2017 when I became sick on my own and was just really left with no answers and very little help from the conventional medicine side of things, that I knew I needed to find my own answers. I needed to become my own advocate. I actually stumbled upon the fellowship that I did in functional medicine, anti-aging medicine with an emphasis on hormones through the Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And I completed that in 2017 and then became board certified as a functional medicine provider in 2019. And that is where I really learned to heal myself. So in 2017, I started having really bad gastrointestinal symptoms. I really just couldn't keep anything down. Um, Even water was running right through me. I started becoming really tired. I just thought it was because I was a year or so into becoming a nurse practitioner. I was really stressed. I was just run down. And I kind of pushed these symptoms aside. I started losing weight, and I'm already a pretty tiny human. So I really couldn't afford to lose any weight. And then I started having blood in my stool. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. So I finally was like, probably need to get that checked out. And once I did, I got a colonoscopy and I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And I was really just given no guidance as to what to do, just told, hey, within a year, we're going to cut your colon out and you're going to be on a biologic for the rest of your life. And that's the plan, right? And I was, I really just knew that there was something else to it. And I remember when I asked my doctor, like, what can I do diet wise to make some changes? Because I still hadn't gone through my fellowship yet. I still didn't know. And he told me diet had nothing to do with it and to just, go get a PPD and a TB shot and all this stuff because we're going to do a biologic. And I just told him we're going to agree to disagree and I'm going to figure this out on my own. And I did. And I suffered a lot. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about functional medicine and what I do today, because I know I know the things to do to not make you guys suffer. And I went through a lot of trial and error and a lot of pain to try to figure it out. And I see people doing that all day long. They're coming into me, I'm on this supplement, on that. I saw this on TV. I'm trying that. I saw this on TikTok. I'm going to try that. And if you really don't have a direction, you'll really spin your wheels and you'll be really, really, really frustrated. And that's really a lot of what I see in my patients is just this frustration of not having the guidance. So lucky for me, I was then later. Yep, it's right. So right, Kinley, I agree. Later, I was then blessed with another autoimmunity, Hashimoto's, and usually the universe works in mysterious ways and they come in twos. And so I don't know if it was chicken or the egg, but what I realized is I could not control my Hashimoto's until I healed my gut. And I think my unhealthy gut triggered my Hashimoto's. So it took me a really long time to realize how to connect all the dots, but I now am flare free. I have healed my ulcerative colitis without medication. I am just able to know the things that I need to do to keep myself healthy. I feel the best I ever have. I did go into perimenopause at age 35, so I am on hormone therapy, and I don't mind telling people that because that's really what stress and inflammation on the body can do. And I think a lot of you might be experiencing some of these symptoms. So I'm going to kind of share with you a lot of what I did to help you guys try to piece together the pieces and not suffer the way I did. I also trained with Dr. Richie Shoemaker, which is really important when we get to some of the environmental things. One of the big things we learned about was mold related toxicity and environmental illness and how that can really interfere with particular organs like the thyroid that are very vulnerable. And I'm a mentor for other providers learning hormones because my passion is teaching people. I just want everyone to know how to heal themselves and everyone to live their best life. So let's get into what is thyroid. So the thyroid is just a butterfly shaped gland. It sits in the middle of your neck. And it is basically our metabolic center. It has its hands and affects almost every single organ system in the body. So it is true what they say, when your thyroid is not right, everything is not right, and you do not feel well. The problem is we look at the thyroid as the thyroid only. We're not looking at it as a whole. And thyroid production actually begins in the pituitary gland, in the brain, right? So we're going to talk about the thyroid as like a factory, a metabolism boosting factory. So inside your brain is the pituitary gland, and that is the boss, right? That is the master signal that is going to help signal the thyroid gland. Think of your thyroid gland as a thyroid hormone producing factory. And then your thyroid cells, your T3 and T4, are the worker bees. So how this whole process works is the boss, the pituitary gland, sends a signal. Your TSH, you've probably heard about, your thyroid stimulating hormone. It sends that to the thyroid or the thyroid factory, right? And it says, hey, go start producing your thyroid hormone. Now, several things have to happen and have to be working appropriately in the body in order for that to happen. So the workers, the thyroid cells, then take iodide from our food, from our bloodstream, and convert it into active iodine. In that whole process, we make hydrogen peroxide as a byproduct. And hydrogen peroxide is a free radical. It's very irritating to the thyroid. This is why we talk about needing particular nutrients like selenium and zinc and glutathione to not irritate the thyroid. one of the biggest things I see is a lot of people are producing their T4, but they don't have enough free radicals. So it's bothering the thyroid and it's not able to convert, because most of us, unfortunately, are nutritionally deficient because our food system is so poor, right? Our soil sucks. Our food system is awful. So then what do we do? Well, you might have heard of thyroid peroxidase, or TPO. That is just an enzyme that helps us convert our thyroid hormone. So that takes that iodine and attaches it to thyroglobulin, another enzyme that you're going to learn about, and it's stored for later until the thyroid receives its order from the boss and says, hey, go release T4 and T3 into the bloodstream. So there's a lot of things that have to happen, and it gets even more complicated than that. What does the thyroid gland do? So it's important that us to know this. And I think many of us don't realize that it does a lot more than we think, right? So some basic things are regulating our body temperature. So someone that has a slow functioning thyroid is going to be hypothyroid, and they're going to be cold all the time, right? Even, you're the one in the house where everyone's hot and you have a sweater on, right? The opposite of that hyperthyroidism is you're really hot all the time. The thyroid gland regulates our bone health. So people that have hypofunctioning thyroids, they might experience more joint pain, muscle aches, difficulty recovering from workouts. Has a lot to do with our brain function. So energy, moods, wakefulness. I see a lot of people in my clinic struggling with anxiety, and it's related to the fact that they don't have any free T3, your bioavailable thyroid hormone. One of the coolest things I think that the thyroid does is it actually aids in lipid metabolism. So I get so many patients that come to me with really high cholesterol and they do not want to be on a statin. And I don't want you to be on a statin either. They're pretty brutal. I know that sometimes they're necessary when we have family history, but when you regulate your thyroid, it actually aids in lipid metabolism. I had one gentleman come to me and his total cholesterol was 400 and his lipids were over 200, his bad cholesterol, his LDL. And so we got him on, we regulated his thyroid gland and got him balanced with his hormones. And his cholesterol came down to half of that. And he never had to start a statin. So it's pretty powerful. An interesting thing too is, I hear all the time from patients, I've been constipated my whole life. Well, our thyroid is involved in gut motility, pushing things through the body. So it slows gastric motility when it's hypofunctioning. So a lot of people are constipated because their thyroid's not optimal. It's involved in our heart health, fluid retention, and kidney function. It helps with our liver processing. So a lot of us start getting these elevated liver enzymes, or the liver's a little bit clogged up. And we have to have a healthy functioning liver and gut in order to convert to our active thyroid hormone. Obviously, metabolism, energy, weight, all of those wonderful things, muscle function, reproductive health, and then sebaceous gland secretion. So a lot of people will get dry hair, skin, nails, hair falling out, all of those things. So these are kind of what I just talked about, symptoms that you may be experiencing, whether you have hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's. So fatigue, weight gain, and weight gain despite doing all the right things, right? You're working out, you're eating right, and you just can't lose weight. And interesting that a lot of people experience is morning headaches that kind of wear off as the day progresses. It almost feels kind of like a fog, and it gets better. Constipation, hypersensitivity to cold, muscle cramps, depression, anxiety, chronic digestive issues, itchy skin, dry, brittle hair, the lateral portion of your eyebrows falling out, right? And you can often wake up with a swelling of the face, or especially with Hashimoto's, maybe even one eye. That was one symptom that I had. I honestly, a funny story is I thought it was because I had I got tear trough filler done at one point, and I thought she had infiltrated my lymphatics, and it was actually my Hashimoto's acting up. So joke's on me. So what's the problem? The problem is that it's not just our thyroid, and we're not looking at the thyroid comprehensively in conventional medicine. So many of us have a problem with the control center, our brain, right? The pituitary gland. We're not getting the signal to communicate with our thyroid gland because we have dysfunction at the mitochondria, at the cellular level, because of inflammation, because of toxins, because of improper gut health, because of gut infections. So most of us aren't even getting the appropriate signaling out. And this can be really confusing for people because you may have a normal TSH, but your T4 and your T3 are low because the signaling isn't even being sent, right? And that's very confusing because if your doctor doesn't see an elevated TSH, he's never going to treat your thyroid, right? Many of us have a problem signaling and converting. So 93% of your thyroid production is T4. That is the only hormone that your body's going to make on its own is our free T4. And T4 is just a prohormone. So it's 300% biologically less active than T3, meaning T4 alone doesn't make you feel good. We have to convert it over to T3. And our body only makes 7% T3. So that means we have to convert it to our active hormone. And most of that happens in the liver and then in the gut and the peripheral tissues. So if you do not have a healthy functioning liver, which most of us are overburdened by toxins, by medications, by birth control, all of these things that affect the liver, then you're not converting your thyroid hormone. And this is where I see a lot of people get stopped up. So we need T4. T4 needs to be converted to T3 through a process of called deiodinization. So basically it takes one of those iodine enzymes and removes it. So you had 4 to start, then you have 3, and now it's active. The problem is we need healthy gut and healthy liver. And we also need specific nutrients for this process. So some that I talked about, selenium, zinc, iron, vitamin D, B12, B complex in general, all of our B vitamins. And I will tell you 9 out of 10 times when I test these different nutrients where we are deficient. Most people are deficient in selenium and in zinc. That's just really common. So many of you may already know you have a problem. Some of you might already be on thyroid medication. And I'm going to kind of talk about how you can help improve your thyroid medication work a little bit better too. So what if you don't know if you've had a problem? What if you've never been tested? I definitely suggest you get some basic labs done, but there are things you can do at home to kind of know if you have a problem. So you can buy just a basic thermometer, a basal body temperature. A lot of women might already be doing this because you're tracking your cycle through the fertility awareness method. If you follow me, then you're probably doing that already. But you can purchase a temperature. And then prior to getting out of bed in the morning, put this thermometer underneath your tongue and check your temperature every day. So if it's consistently around 95 to 96 degrees, that's lower than it should be. And that could be a sign of hypothyroidism. That's one really easy way to do it. Another way is take your vital signs. You can even buy one of those little finger pulse oximetry that tests your pulse. If you're consistently below 60 or hanging around 50, that could be a sign of hypothyroidism too. And it's really interesting because when I get patients on medication or when I help people correct their thyroid naturally and they start to feel better, they have the Aura rings on too, right? And I noticed this with mine, and they're like, "Wow, my resting heart rate is going a lot higher. My heart rate variability is all off." Because when they started wearing the Aura ring, they were around 40 to 50, which was way too low. And now the Aura ring has to catch up with them being normal. So they were low and slow before, and now they're around 60, 70 where they should be. And the Aura ring kind of has to catch up. So they think that they're having a high heart rate and they're just normal, right? They're back to where they should be. They have a healthy metabolism. They're hungry now. You can also look in the mirror. So you can look at the area of your neck immediately above your collarbones. You can even feel it right now. And what you can do in the mirror is tilt your head back and take a drink of water and watch as you swallow. It's really easy to do if you're particularly thin. If not, arch your neck back a little bit. You can see it better. If you see a bulge, your thyroid may be enlarged. That does not mean that you have cancer or a tumor. It just could mean that your thyroid is irritated and it's working really hard to make your thyroid hormones. And you got to do some of these things that we're going to talk about to get it under control. Now, if you do see that, I do always suggest going to your physician and getting an ultrasound, but that means your thyroid is angry, right? You got an angry thyroid and we need to help it out a little bit. So what are some of the problems with traditional testing? Well, like I mentioned before, in traditional medicine, we just test typically a TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone. That's it, right? And your TSH and the total T4 or your free T4 are really just telling us if the thyroid is producing hormones. That's it. It's not really telling us how the thyroid is functioning on a complete level and if it's converting to our active thyroid hormone. The other problem is, according to Endocrine Society guidelines, we can let a TSH ride up to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 before we'll even put patients on medication. I'm here to tell you, if your TSH is over 2 and you're not converting, you feel bad. And most of us are there. But personally, if I didn't have to test the TSH legally, I wouldn't ever test it because it tells me nothing about the thyroid. And that's the problem, is most doctors stop here. And I hear this all the time. Patients come in and they're like, oh, no, my thyroid's fine. I'm like, well, I haven't tested it and I guarantee it's not fine. So let me test it. The other problem is we're not actually looking at a free T3. So this is your free and bioavailable thyroid hormone. It's what's going to make you feel good. It's what your body actually uses. And again, most lab panels don't contain it. And I see all the time patients are like, oh, they did a free uptake. That doesn't tell you anything. It's useless. Or they did a total T. I need to see the free. I need to see what's available for your body to use. So a lot of us are functioning lower here. For me, this number needs to be 3.5 upwards of 5, depending on the patient. Most of us are coming in around 2.8, and I'm going to tell you that feels really bad. The other problem is most physicians will not check a reverse T3 unless you are sick and dying in the ICU. It is a number that indicates stress and inflammation. And so typically doctors do not test this. But reverse T3 is like the blocker. So I always give the analogy of football. The reverse T3 is like your defensive line, and your free T3 is like the quarterback. If you have a really good defensive line, and then you have a crappy quarterback, like if you don't have a Tom Brady on your team, the quarterback is not going to get through to that defense, to the end zone being your cell. So this reverse T3 is made in response of stress and inflammation, and it blocks that T3 from getting through the cell. And it kind of grabs any other T3 that you have, so it's not available for your body to use. So we have to work on the inflammation and the stress component, the adrenal glands, in order to free that up. Right. So that's another problem. The other thing is our thyroid antibodies. So I mentioned before, the body needs TPO and thyroglobulin enzymes to convert to and store our hormones for later. Well, when the body develops something called Hashimoto's, it is going to make antibodies against these enzymes. And basically, your body will be unable to go through the whole process of thyroid production. And the interesting part is our antibodies, our TPO and our thyroglobulin, can be elevated upwards of 10 years prior to seeing any changes in your TSH, right? So it goes missed. And a lot of times, if we just looked at our antibodies, I could fix that and fix the immune system before you even have struggles with your thyroid, but we're not. We're not checking it, and it's going missed. I personally think I had Hashimoto's my whole life. It was just never tested. And God, I wish I would have tested it in my teens, 20s, because it would have saved me a lot of trouble later. But here we are, a loss. Here we are. In my Master Your Thyroid class, I'm also going to teach you about additional markers needed for the thyroid. So we need healthy levels of ferritin. We need healthy levels of vitamin D to aid in conversion. We need healthy levels of vitamin B12. There are also specific things in your lab chemistry that can indicate that maybe something is wrong in the gut, and we need to have a healthy functioning gut in order for our thyroid to be working normally. So these things can be, a low ferritin, elevated eosinophils, or elevated liver enzymes, even lipids. All of those things can indicate, yeah, maybe you have a thyroid issue, but maybe you also have a parasite hanging out in those areas, because those are areas that it hangs out in. And by treating the parasite, we can deactivate the immune system and help with things like Hashimoto's and allow the thyroid to function better. So we can actually get a lot from just traditional blood work. We don't need fancy smancy testing. I love the fancy smancy testing, but we don't have to go there initially. If you have someone that really knows and understands blood work, they can tell a lot from your blood. So that's the good news. And that's something you're going to learn in this course as well. So what is Hashimoto's? Well, Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an autoimmune condition in which the immune system attacks the thyroid. So it actually is not a thyroid issue. It is an immune system issue. So basically, your immune system gets confused and it recognizes your thyroid cells as like foreign invaders and it launches an attack on it. So we got two classes of immune cells. We have T cells, which are like the army foot soldiers. Okay, they go into the thyroid gland and they go to combat with those thyroid cells, and they prevent the thyroid cells from performing the normal thyroid hormone function, like producing T4 and T3. That's one way Hashimoto's works. The other way is we get these B cells, which are kind of like the snipers, right? They work with your T cells and they use bullets, aka antibodies, to disrupt thyroid hormone production at the factory level, right? So the thyroid's not producing those hormones, and we're obviously not getting enough of what we need, T4 to T3. But the problem is that all started with the immune system, right? Not actually the thyroid, but now it's attacked the thyroid. So B cells shoot off two different kinds of bullets, the thyroid peroxidase or TPO, or your thyroglobulin. And this is basically named after the machinery involved in thyroid production that we mentioned in the beginning. So both T and B cells launch an attack on the thyroid gland. And it's this persistent inflammation that can lead to scarring of the thyroid gland and the development of thyroid disease. So the good news is, if you catch it early enough, you can reverse the inflammation and prevent the scarring. Not everyone is lucky enough to get caught there, but it can be done. That means you might not be subject to medication your whole life if you can work on this from a root cause issue. One of the main reasons why I started this course was because Hashimoto's is so difficult to treat. And a lot of people just want to come in and take medication and think that that is going to fix their problem, and it's not. It takes all of the things we're going to be speaking about: gut health, removing toxins, fixing the liver, managing stress. But what I realized is thyroid function in general needs all those things, not just Hashimoto's. And so that's why I expanded this course to not be just focused on Hashimoto's, but to be mastering your entire thyroid. So I just feel that it's really important that we address all these things, even when we're just talking about the thyroid in general. So some of you here might already be on thyroid medications. And so I wanted to kind of talk about the different kinds of medication and why maybe yours aren't working for you. So we can kind of treat the thyroid in several different ways, whether we have a production issue, a blockage issue, or a conversion and other kind of issues, right? So the production issue means that we're not producing enough T4, right? And your doctor typically will check a TSH and a T4, see the TSH is elevated, your T4 is low, and they'll give you something called Synthroid, right? Some of you might have heard of it, or levothyroxine is the generic version. And the problem here is that if your gut and liver aren't optimal, the T4 may work for a couple of weeks, and then you're like, oh, I feel tired again. And your doctor checks your labs and he's like, oh, you need more. And he increases your T4 and you feel good for a couple of weeks, and then you start feeling bad again, right? Anyone go through that? It's because you're not converting to your active thyroid hormone, and you may be lacking the nutrients you need to protect the thyroid as you're making that T4 because you're now taking it synthetically, right? So that's one of the problems. And most doctors will go for Synthroid, sometimes Levoxyl. There's Tyrosine, which is way more expensive. Those are all T4 only. Some of you may be on something called Cytomel along with your Synthroid because you also have low free T3 or a blockage issue. So this is where that high reverse T3 comes in. But the problem is we also need to fix T3 and the underlying issue, which is stress and the lack of conversion. So yes, we need Synthroid T4, and yes, we need Cytomel T3, but we also still need to fix the conversion issue in the liver and give you the nutrients to feed your thyroid. So a lot of times, some of us don't feel good still because we still have those issues going on, and we're going up in medications, and then we start having side effects from the medications. I hear all the time, oh my God, my thyroid medications made me feel so awful. They should not. You should feel better. The issue is you're not on the right combination or you're not on the right medication for you. And sometimes it takes multiple changes in medication to get the right one for you. There's no rhyme or reason to it sometimes. Sometimes patients don't do well with certain ones, and we got to keep switching it around. Then we might have all of these issues, right? Conversion issue. We might have Hashimoto's. We might have low T4, T3, and very symptomatic, high TSH. So we have to actually treat T4 and T3 together, replace missing nutrients, and fix the underlying issues. So some of you may be on a desiccated thyroid, like an NP thyroid or an Armour. That is fine, but the ratio is different, right? Our body is typically a 1-to-4 ratio of T4 to T3, a 4-to-1 ratio, sorry, 4-to-1 of T4 to T3. But your NP thyroid and your Armour is going to be similar to a pig, and that's 1-to-1. So often we see patients are improving some, but they still actually need an extra replacement of T4, or maybe that's because they don't have the right nutrients to feed the thyroid to make T4. So there's a lot that goes into it. And a lot of it is because all of the things that we're going to talk about right here. So the gut's not healed. So we have a poor functioning liver. So we're not converting T4 to T3. We're not removing toxins because the liver is sluggish. And that is an endocrine disruptor for our thyroid gland. We are not cleaning up our diet. So we need to do that. We need clean water, clean air. We need to manage stress. The adrenal glands will block our thyroid receptors and prevent that medication from making you feel good, or from your thyroid converting, or from your thyroid producing. And we have to fix sleep. If we're not sleeping, then we're never going to feel good, right? So we have to fix all of these things. So why the gut? In this course, I got a little out of hand with the gut section because I just think it's so important, and it's definitely a passion of mine. So you guys, if you end up signing up for this course, you're really getting a whole gut healing section, a whole gut healing course inside this course, because it's so important. Many of us feel so bad because we don't even realize that we have gut issues. Many of us can have extra intestinal symptoms, meaning maybe we have acne, maybe we have hair loss, maybe we have brain fog or mood swings, but we don't have the extreme bloating. We don't have diarrhea or constipation. It doesn't mean you don't have a gut issue, right? And 20% of the T4 to T3 conversion depends on healthy gut bacteria or a microbiome. Poor digestive health depletes the body of key nutrients that we need for the thyroid, like zinc, tyrosine, selenium, and vitamin A and vitamin D. So we need all of these for a healthy functioning thyroid. And a lot of this is produced by the healthy bacteria in our gut. And so if our gut's not healthy, we're definitely not going to be producing any. An inflamed GI tract also exhausts the adrenal glands and blocks the conversion of T4 to T3. An interesting thing for the women out there, even men too, estrogen affects men, is poor GI function can lead to recirculation of estrogen, leading to estrogen dominance. Many of you have very heavy, painful cycles and you're estrogen dominant. This actually slows down thyroid function. The other thing too is hypothyroidism slows transit and intestinal absorption rates. So it contributes to constipation. If we're not pooping, we are not detoxifying, right? So our toxic burden is much higher too. So you see how all of this just continues to be connected to each other. So how do we heal? Well, what we're going to discuss in the course is very in-depth. It's a lot more than what I can do tonight, but we're going to talk about the common inflammatory foods that you need to remove that likely are contributing to gut dysbiosis and leaky gut, aka increased intestinal permeability, right? So all these bugs and things that shouldn't be in there that are in there. I'm going to teach you how to identify parasites in some of the lab work that you may have, or symptoms of, hey, maybe you do have a parasite, and how to treat it in specific protocols. We're going to talk about toxins that could be affecting your gut and specific medications. One of the big things is talking about proton pump inhibitors. So if you have gastric reflux, or your doctor's like, here, take a PPI, like Nexium or Protonix or omeprazole, you are wiping out your hydrochloric acid and your microbiome, and we got to get you off of that. So replace is all about how we can replace hydrochloric acid and enzymes. Our stomach is really acidic and it needs to be in order to kill off the bad bacteria and also help break down our food so we can pull and extract nutrients like vitamins from B vitamin, zinc, iron, all of those good things. If you have dysbiosis in the small intestine, then you're definitely not going to make iron, and that feeds into the gut, right? And then our enzymes too. And some of these things are really easy. Just talking to you about slowing down and chewing your food, drinking warm water with lemon when you wake up, maybe doing a little apple cider vinegar. These are all things that we can do that a lot of you have in your pantry, right? But we get so bogged down by all these fancy smancy things out there that we need to do to heal. And it's not true. There's a lot we can do by just slowing down, taking some deep breaths, right? But most of us don't. Repopulating is restoring the microbiome. So a lot of us have dysbiosis, or we have like no healthy gut bacteria at all. Whoops, I'm sorry. And we need to restore that gut microbiome so that we can defend ourselves. The gut microbiome has been tied to cardiovascular health, to so many different things, and it helps with that conversion of our T4 to T3. So we're going to talk about different things on what you can do with your diet alone to restore the microbiome, and then specific different types of probiotics that can help you, and the prebiotics that you can get from food. Because if we aren't feeding the expensive probiotics that we're getting, then we're really just wasting our money because we're not really inoculating the colon. And then repair is talking about replacing lost nutrients. What nutrients do we need to really heal the gut? So we're going to go into depth on all of these things. I'm going to talk about the vagus nerve, which is our gut-brain connection. If that is not healed, you will struggle with the gut. And there are simple things that you can do, like cold plunges or turning your shower to cold, gargling, just slowing down and chewing your food to restore the vagus nerve, that don't cost a lot of money and that are things you can take into your everyday life. One of the biggest things I see when we're trying to heal is that we're not talking about drainage first. So some of you out there might have gone and done a detox before, or done something that you bought online and felt worse. It's because if you do not open up the elimination pathways, if they're clogged, then those toxins are going to be more toxic when they're water soluble, and you're going to feel really bad. So remember, it's not the germ, it's the terrain. So how many of you have used prescription medications ever in your life? All of us, right? Especially those PPIs, especially, things like different medications like metformin or cholesterol medications, so many, the list goes on and on. How many of us drink alcohol? We're all guilty, right? How many of us have little time in nature, right? Are you getting outside every day and grounding? Probably not. Are you getting sun every day? We live in the South, so maybe some of us are. How many of us have perfect sleep habits, right? Most of us struggle with sleep. I get it. I did too. And sometimes I even do, and I know what I need to do to course correct. Our dietary habits. How many of us have perfect dietary habits? No one, right? Are we more sedentary than we need to? Most of us are because of our jobs. And then do we have mismanaged stress or unresolved trauma? Trauma is something I'm going to talk a lot about. You're going to learn a lot about in the adrenal section. I have two really special guests that are going to come on to the course and help talk about ways that you can help manage stress. Guys, this is one of the biggest things that held me back from healing is I had unresolved trauma and I had stress that I was not dealing with, and it was keeping me sick. And so that's one of the things I work on hardest to this day is managing my stress. We have to be accountable for our contribution, what we have done towards making our terrain weak and susceptible to disruption. If we aren't nailing the basics, then we will just continue to suffer. So fixing the gallbladder and the liver. How do you know if you have congestion in the liver? Well, headaches or migraines, usually they're unilateral or one-sided or behind the eyes. That's often very common with parasites too. You might have acne or any other kind of skin conditions. That's a telltale sign of liver congestion. You may have elevated liver enzymes or high cholesterol or bilirubin, right? So things that we can see in your labs. Estrogen dominant disorders. So some of you might have PCOS or endometriosis, fibroids, really bad periods or PMS leading up to your periods. You might get really thick fibrocystic breasts around your period, or maybe they stay all the time. And of course, thyroid dysfunction. These are all signs of liver congestion. Anxiety and depression. Depression is anger turned inwards. So if we have unresolved trauma, again, that is going to keep us stuck, right? And then adrenal fatigue, and again, suppressed anger. So we have to manage our stress. Stress is something that we talk about, but a lot of us don't even really understand where it comes from, right? It is produced in the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are two walnut-sized shaped glands that sit on top of the kidneys. And in response to stress, they produce cortisol. This is our fight or flight, and we need cortisol to survive. In ancestral times, we made cortisol so that we could go hunt and gather. And then it came back down, right? We rose with the sun and we went to bed with the sun. There were no cell phones. There was no one texting us. There was no one calling us and bothering us. So that normal cortisol function went up and down appropriately as it should. But now today, we are in this constant state of stress, right? And stress is sometimes misidentified. I hear all the time from my patients, oh, I'm not stressed. Well, stress is a strain or pressure that causes something to bend out of shape. So that's anything, right? And we're going to show you some of the causes of stress, but a lot of us don't identify that. And it can be physiological stress, it can be emotional, it can be toxins, so many different things. Modern living causes too much stress, so we have this chronic activation. Now, thyroid, progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, they all build our bones up and help us heal. Whereas cortisol is the wear and tear hormone. It increases our allostatic load, which is basically the amount of stress we can handle. So it breaks down our bones and our muscles. It slows healing time. It impairs digestion. When you need to run from a tiger, you're not going to be thinking about digesting dinner, right? It slows our metabolism. It downregulates endocrine function and decreases the production of hormones, and it affects our immunity. So it allows things like Hashimoto's to rear their ugly head. So what are sources of stress? Well, there's four main sources. Inflammation is one. So this can be gut imbalances, infections like dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of good and bad bacteria, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or H. pylori. This can be a toxic overload. So from your environment, right? Clean water, clean air, clean food are the basic three principles I teach. This can also be from medications. It can be from skincare, things we're putting on our skin, what we're cleaning our house with, our laundry detergent, so many different things. Infections, new or reactivated. So mold, stealth infections, those are two things I'm going to mention. This can be physiological. So chronic emotional or mental stress, home life, work life, whatever that may be for you, kids, relationship. This can be actual or perceived. So the stories you make up in your head about something that hasn't happened or maybe never will, right? And then trauma, we shift into fight or flight every time something resurfaces that trauma. And trauma can be something very little. It's what is traumatic for you. It doesn't have to be a significant event. Circadian rhythm disruptions, so poor sleep, that is a huge stress on us. And then nutrition is probably one of the biggest ones. Inflammatory foods, missing nutrients, right? So our food system is really broken. Most of us are missing nutrients. Imbalanced blood sugar throughout the day. Most of us are not eating enough, and we have blood sugar drops just consistently. We're actually hypoglycemic a lot. And then we eat something to boost our energy because we don't know why we're so tired. And then we have high blood sugar, and then we're insulin resistant. Many of us, especially the women I see, are under eating, and we're not eating enough macronutrients. So the things we need to build our bones and build our hormones and our strength. So how does it affect our thyroid? Well, high cortisol levels cause chronic inflammation, weakening the immune system. So this is where that disruption with the boss happens, right? The brain. It decreases our level of conversion of T4 to T3. It causes our cells to lose sensitivity to thyroid hormones. So we're less sensitive to even the thyroid hormones that we're taking. It weakens the immune barrier of the digestive tract, causing cracks or leakiness in our foundation, allowing the immune system to be triggered. High levels of stress also lead to mitochondrial DNA damage. So again, that boss, the brain, the pituitary gland. The most interesting thing that I see is I always test cortisol in all my patients. And when the thyroid is under functioning, guess what kicks in? The adrenal glands. So they produce excess stress or cortisol as basically your hormone replacement, your replacement steroids, so that you can still function, right? So now you're functioning primarily on cortisol. And the body doesn't break down cortisol quickly when we're in hypothyroid. It's slow, right? So it's not pushing cortisol out as fast as it should. When we treat the thyroid, often, if you're not addressing the adrenal glands, it can unmask a bigger cortisol issue. So now the thyroid's functioning normally and you're pushing cortisol out quicker. And guess what? That high cortisol you thought you had is now actually very low. And we're clearing cortisol out of the body and the thyroid meds stop working, right? We might be on thyroid meds and now we're on them for a few months. We start to, maybe we didn't test our cortisol. We start to think, God, I don't feel as good as I used to. My doctor checks my T4. Oh, you need more, right? Because the issue is actually the adrenal glands too. So this is why I always treat them concurrently, because if we don't identify the cortisol and the adrenal issue, we will stay stuck. And issues with cortisol, they're going to impact weight. They're going to contribute to insulin resistance. And those insulin receptors are specific to the abdomen, the outer thigh, and the bra roll. And a lot of men and women are like, that is where I'm carrying all my weight. You probably are shaking your head like, yep, I have a spare tire around. I do not know where this came from. So my question for you is, what are you doing currently in your life that is making your body feel stressed out and unsafe? Are you not sleeping? Are you over exercising? We're going to talk about that in the course. Are you skipping meals? Do you have excess toxins that you don't even realize? Is your diet very poor? Is it nutritionally deficient? Right? A lot of us think we're doing a lot better with our diet than we are. And do we have potentially hidden infections? So how many of you experience this 3 p.m. slump, right? A lot of us do. And there's a lot of things that contribute to this. And I'm going to help you try to identify these and fix these. So poor sleep, usually this causes a poor rise in cortisol. So we're not getting that awakening cortisol response, right? And then many of us aren't eating breakfast. So we're not helping that insulin response start off in the morning. And then by mid-morning, we're crashed. We're reaching for sugar. We're reaching for cortisol. And then we're really just effed the rest of the day. Excuse my French, but we're really just screwed. If we mess up in the morning, that's it. And the whole day is a blood glucose roller coaster. So we're really going to focus on that low blood sugar and helping you guys balance your blood sugar throughout the day. So most of us are not eating enough, or lunch is a really high sugar, simple carb meal. So we're crashing. So we really want to focus on eating a protein packed lunch, having breakfast, having a high protein snack. And that crash at 3 p.m. is actually a great time for dark chocolate. And I'm going to talk about the secret of that in the course, but dark chocolate is great for a lot of different things. And that's a great time to have it. Instead of at nighttime, we actually want to have it earlier in the day. Dehydration is another one. When the adrenal glands are imbalanced, it pulls aldosterone from the body. That regulates our sodium and our potassium and our water balance. So drink water, add minerals. Most of us are chugging liters and liters of water, but we're not adding our minerals back in. So we're just further diluting ourselves and we're getting headaches and we're wondering why we still feel dehydrated. If your pee is clear, you're overhydrated. You need minerals, right? It shouldn't be clear. It shouldn't be orange. It should be somewhere in between. And then move, get up and move, right? Most of us are not moving enough. So we're experiencing that 3 p.m. slump. So what about toxins in your thyroid? Well, endocrine disrupting chemicals interfere with the body's endocrine system. They produce adverse developmental, reproductive, neurological, and immune effects, right? So they basically mimic hormones. They can mimic hormones and overstimulate them, causing things like estrogen dominant. They can block them. So it's basically like a key fitting in the lock, but it won't turn the lock. So they occupy those receptors and they disrupt hormones' natural actions and send mixed signals. So xenoestrogens mimic estrogen. They block the T4 to T3 conversion. These are things like your plastic water bottles, Tupperware, receipts, any kind of conventional meats. They are in our skincare, our products, our drinking water. And there is a whole section dedicated to toxins in this course to help you identify them and eliminate them. And a lot of it is easier than you think. They also disrupt metabolic hormones like insulin and the thyroid, causing weight gain. So clean air is one of the biggest things that I advocate for. Many toxins in the form of gaseous molecules are being suspended into the air. And the interesting thing is our inside air environment is even more toxic than our outside environment. It's crazy. And even if you live in a new home, you should have an air filter. And it's kind of interesting because I worked a lot in mold related illness. I've seen a lot of new homes affected by mold. So you can never be too sure. So Air Doctor and Austin Air are two really powerful systems that you can get. I am not affiliated with these brands. I just really like them. It's what I have at home, and I run a one for 1,000 square feet. So it almost covers my whole home. Not really, but anyways, I'm getting the areas that I spend the most time in, and this can make a huge difference in your air quality. So definitely invest in your air and in your water. While the United States has some of the safest drinking water available, it's far from perfect. Our drinking water is contaminated with countless toxins. So leaching of chemicals from pipes or natural deposits, runoff from local land use or agricultural, right? It's summertime. We're trying to get our grass to grow. That's stuff that's getting in our water. Glyphosate, it's so disruptive to the body. We have malfunctioning in water waste treatment plants, improper disposal of pollutants, disinfectant and treatment of toxic chemicals is going into our water, and the ever increasing spread of toxins through the environment. And one study actually showed things like Lexapro and different antidepressants are getting in our water. So you need to filter your water. My favorite, I'll share a few in the course, but I like the Berkey or Aquasana is just a countertop one. So I don't have a big fancy one on my sink. I just have a countertop one that I fill as I need throughout the day, and I filter all my water. And I notice a huge difference. I actually do. I can really say that to you guys. All of these things I do myself, so I wouldn't suggest them if I hadn't done them. And then clean food. So by definition, the standard American diet consists of ultra processed foods, sugars, fats, and sodium. It's high in simple carbs, chemicals. These packaged foods are shelf stable for years. You got to think what's in there that's keeping it shelf stable. It's not good for us, right? And most of our foods are inflammatory. They have more omega-6s than 3s. So there's a whole section dedicated to nutrition alone on the simple changes you can make. And the thing is, what we cook in matters. So our cookware, what we store our food in matters. What we clean our food in matters. What is the point of eating organic food if you're going to clean it with chemicals or cook it in chemicals, right? So all of those things are things I'm going to teach you guys in the course. My biggest advice is eat the clean 15 and follow the clean 15 and dirty dozen, right? Clean 15 is okay to eat, not organic. Dirty dozen is not. Oh my God, I've talked for so long. Okay, I'm going to speed this up so you guys can ask questions. I'm so sorry. Thank you guys for staying on. Stealth infections are something that are really important. So mold's a big one, and it's a big problem here in South Carolina. I don't know if all of you are attending from South Carolina, but it's a problem, and it's everywhere, and it's often not visible until it causes problems. I've been affected by mold 3 times, and it triggered my antibodies to over 5,000. That does not feel good. But mold produces mycotoxins, which inflame the body, and they produce excess reactive oxidative species. So they block the conversion of our T4 to T3. They block the enzymes necessary for thyroid production, destroys the mitochondria, and it increases development of antibodies. And there are many people out there that have stubborn weight gain. That is because mold is lipophilic, meaning it loves fat. So you will not lose weight if you're in a moldy environment or if you've been affected by mold and haven't properly treated it. So we're going to talk about some of the things you can do to help protect yourself. Estrogen dominance causes estrogen dominance. It disrupts the thyroid, it causes respiratory issues, crushing fatigue because it wipes out your mitochondria, headaches and migraines, really a lot of upper respiratory issues. A lot of people can have frequent urination because it affects our antidiuretic hormone. A lot of digestive issues because it's inhaled into the microbiome and increases leaky gut, joint and muscle pain, and then propensity to experience static shocks. The other one we're going to talk about in the course is Epstein-Barr. So this is, you might have heard as the kissing disease as you were a kid. Some of you might have had it. Some of you might have not. It's a very invasive and persistent virus and one of the most common and detrimental viruses of our time because we used to think it was self-limiting and it didn't come back. And now we're seeing more reactivation of this. So 90 to 94% of the population is exposed or infected at some point of our life. Most of us, because we're healthy and young when we're exposed, it just doesn't cause any issues. So how many of you may have had mono or were around friends or roommates that were sick all the time? This is probably most of us. It looks for somewhere to hide out, the liver, the spleen, or the thyroid, and it goes under the radar until something triggers it. COVID is the perfect example. We saw a lot of reactivated Epstein-Barr with COVID, and it's the perfect trigger for our autoimmune system or Hashimoto's. So symptoms are going to be more severe than originally: flu-like, anxiety, depression, brain fog, insomnia, a lot of vagus nerve disruption, so issues with our microbiome, and then EMF sensitivity, so a lot of sensitivity to Wi-Fi. So what do you get in this course? I've talked about a lot of things and a lot of things that we need to fix for the thyroid to be working appropriately. And I'm sure most of you have not thought about the thyroid in all of these different realms, but it takes a village. So I'm going to talk about the basics. What is the thyroid? What does it do? How to understand your medications. I give you a cheat sheet to take to your doctor about labs. I have a really extensive lab section and labs that you can ask for, but also questions you can ask your doctor like, hey, why is this happening? How can I understand my medications? I also talk about the Hashimoto's difference. So we go into depth a little bit more about Hashimoto's. The gut, again, is a standalone course. So you're going to learn the 4 hours of healing your gut just in that section alone. It is the longest section in the course. You're going to get an adrenal health section with bonus meditation from my dear friend Laura Oakes, who is a trauma coach. And then I'm going to introduce you to breath work and Psych K with Ellie Richter. So those are 2 guest appearances inside the course. Nutrition, we're going to talk about the ins and outs on nutrition, a simplistic way to look at nutrition. I don't believe in any one diet. I don't think carnivore, keto, all that is right. I think there's a simple way that we can look at food in the natural state that it's supposed to be eaten at and using it as fuel and to balance our blood sugar. That's what I believe. That may not be what you believe, and that is fine, but that's what science says, and that's what the body wants, right? So we don't need to eliminate complete food groups. There's certain things I tell you to eliminate, like inflammatory foods, but it can be a lot more simplistic than we're making it. Infections, how to identify and help clear them, toxins, how to reduce them, and then a whole resource section of certain protocols, supplements, my favorite products, some recommendations for you guys on what to use. So that's a lot of information. The course is going live. It should be live tonight if I did it correctly. Bear with me, I'm not technologically savvy. So tonight and for the next 72 hours or tomorrow, I guess 24 hours until noon, you're going to get $100 off the course. So again, this is lifetime access for the course. It is self-paced. It is a ton of information, guys. So you do not have to get through all of it at once, but it is a wealth of information. You can go back to it at any time, go back to the resource section, listen to things over and over. Tonight's offer is $295. Again, I think tomorrow at noon or tomorrow, we'll go to 8 p.m. It goes to $395. And you can go to my website and check it out. Anyone that signs up for this tonight will also get an email about that. But I want to hear from you guys and I want to answer any questions you might have. I know a lot of you, I think I stopped sharing, had some comments of symptoms that most of you are symptomatic the same exact way. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone have any questions for me? Things that I can help answer, things that I can help you with? I'm happy to answer anything that you might have. Don't be shy. You could unmute yourself too.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you, Lee?
Thank you. Good. Thank you for sharing all that information.
Oh, you're
So
welcome.
I was just diagnosed in December postpartum, and I have Graves.
Mhm.
I'm with one endocrinologist right now, but have an appointment with a new one in July. They're not functional medicine doctors, and anytime that I've asked about diet or supplements or getting tests for other things, I'm kind of shut down, or they say, oh, go ask your primary. How do you recommend handling that? Because like they're the expert in the situation, but here I am reading and learning all these other things,
Yeah.
and I want to advocate for myself, but they don't seem, it's medication and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, endocrinologists aren't specialists in treating the thyroid. They are really good at treating diabetes from what I've experienced, and that's really what they focus on. So they won't talk about diet at all.
Mm,
And from my experience, what I see that is going to help balance the diet, that balance the thyroid most is keeping your blood sugar stable throughout the day. So most of us are not eating enough or having too many periods of hypoglycemia. So
mm,
really starting that day off with a meal that's anywhere from 20 to 30 grams of protein, getting quality protein in, making sure that protein is not filled with hormones. So organic meats, grass-fed meats actually really matters. And then pairing your meals with a protein, a fat, a fiber, and a green at each meal to slow the release of blood glucose and prevent those spikes. So that's one of the things I talk about a lot in my course is like the different types of foods that can be irritating to the thyroid. And that can trigger like endocrine disruptors, right? And disrupt the thyroid. Unfortunately, I've been there. You're not going to get very far with them. They're just not, they get like an hour course in their first year
mm.
of med school, and that's really it. So I get it. It's extremely frustrating. And then, trying to learn it on different things online, everyone's got a different opinion. So it's super challenging. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know, but hang in
thank you.
there. You will
Thank
get
you.
there. But yeah, I don't know that they're the best route to go.
That's what I'm learning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Does anyone else have any questions? There'll be a replay of this. I think that will go out tomorrow. So you guys can listen again if you need to. And again, the link for the course is on the website. Feel free to send me any other questions that you guys have. And I just appreciate your attention and listening to me ramble forever. So you guys have a good night. And again, I'll see you on Instagram. I'm always there hanging out. So always feel free to reach out there, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.